Okay, so let me recover for 2 seconds. I was very honored to testify to the Little River Commission's initial hearing for this study last year, and I'm honored to be here today to talk to you basically about the same thing. The first thing I said to them that I will say here is design is incredibly important, and everyone here who works in government is doing a lot of it. For me, as a user experience designer, which is probably a word that you'll hear a bunch, design means creating an effect on purpose. And if you're talking about user experience design, it's creating an effect on someone's experience of an interaction, a service, the government itself that you create on purpose. And honestly, I don't know anyone in the private sector who has the potential to impact other humans through this set of methods as the people who work in government. And in fact, every time I meet government staff and public servants, I discover that they're making design decisions every day, and often really good design decisions, and without necessarily thinking of themselves as a designer. So I'm guessing most of you who work for the state government, raise your hand if you'd introduce yourself at a cocktail party and say, I'm a designer. You are mischievous. Most of you wouldn't, and you don't need to, but every single time you put a form letter into simpler language, every time that you make it easier for the people who work at the counter at the DMV to do their jobs, every time that you set up a forum to get public feedback and understand what people's real needs are, say around starting a business, you're doing design, and you're doing good design that benefits the public. So as a designer who works in the public interest, you guys are some of my favorite people. And I wanted to share with you a couple of spectacular examples that have been done recently by people who would not introduce themselves at a party as designers. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, established after the recent crisis to make things a little easier for the people who are customers of the financial industry, regulate them, keep them on their toes. This is not even really a digital design project, and the people who did it, by the way, had the title of IT Specialist 3. So they did a little bureaucracy hack over there, and they brought in some professional designers, and they said, do you mind having IT specialist on your card for a little while if you can work on some really interesting design problems? This is a before and after of mortgage disclosure statements. Has anybody gotten a mortgage in here? And were you able to easily understand the form that they gave you that showed exactly the details of what you wanted to pay? Most people aren't. And so the folks at the CFPB used a bunch of simple design tools, probably would have been recognizable to people designing documents in the 19th century. Better white space, better headlines, black and white, bigger type in some places, clear listing. And they created a much more easily understandable document that millions of people can use to be able to have a better conversation with their lenders. This was not exactly a design project per se. This was a policy project with design around it, but it's incredibly important, much more important than Uber's latest upgrade. I also wanted to share a local level. Now, this was not done by any self-designers. This is a piece of software created by two career local government IT guys named Cameron and Dave, encouraged by their CIO named Jonathan. And what this used to be before they redesigned it was a GIS information system with a list of blue links that was really aimed at the specialist population. What it is today is something that nearly every city I know wants and every citizen wants. It lets you type in your address and see all the information the city's got about your house or a business that you're looking at or a building you might be thinking of moving into, from crime to property ownership to everything, all in one simple place. So when I hear about something like this, I'm excited. I called up Jonathan and said, how'd you do it? He said, well, we basically did a lot of usability testing. We just kept going back and talking to people who might want to use something like this. This is what that process looks like. And this is actually from the Cut Group in Chicago, which is a wonderful organization doing this in an inclusive way. And it basically means using the people who are actually the beneficiaries of your program or service or the users of your product to test whether you are meeting your design goals. So the great thing about having clear goals is that they become testable, and this is when you really start to do design with intention. These are some I hope, uncontroversial design goals for public systems that I think are pretty important. But you can have smaller, larger ones. You can imagine a goal that says we want to get people in and out of a particular thing in 15 minutes. You'll be able to test it using some of these techniques of user research. I want to mention one more thing, which probably all of us need to think about in terms of goals, which is where we need to meet people. This is from Pew in 2014, actually, showing that there's a whole segment of Americans, and mostly fairly vulnerable people, who are now connected not just to the internet, but to the world through a single device, and that's their smartphone. And so that's where they can make calls, that's where they can receive calls about jobs, that's how they can get online and find out about anything. These are people that I hope that everyone will think about in their next set of designs for the public. It isn't easy. I'll say that to you as someone who's been doing it for over 20 years. At the same time, it isn't something that requires a bunch of advanced training or a specialist degree. I don't personally have one. It's also something where there is no level at which it's too small an impact. So if you talk to a couple of users of something that you're making, if you go down and spend an hour watching how the process goes at the counter, you are sure to learn something that will make things better, even without a huge investment. If you can make a huge investment, so much the better. It gets even better from there. And I think we're going to hear some more wonderful stories. So I want to thank all of you for the work that you do in designing for citizens, and I hope to be of help to you sometime in the future. Thank you.